To Cheyenne, Wyoming. Where standing by is Boyd Wiggam, who sits in a massive library surrounded by law books behind a huge oak desk. At least I hope that's the office they gave you.
I don't know what office you're talking about,
Okay.
Glenn. I'm not seeing much
Not
oak,
really?
and
No.
not many books either.
Did they get you your desk from Walmart or someplace like that?
I don't know, but I
Yeah,
do
okay.
have a really nice view of the back of the jail.
Well, at least we have that. Okay, good. Okay. Boyd Wiggam from Wyoming Liberty Group. We have a list of topics lined up from Cheyenne. And the first one that you mentioned to me this morning that you wanted to talk about is something that I love talking about. And that's the whole idea, Boyd, of Uber coming to Wyoming, because I'm Uber hyperactive and a big fan of Uber. So for those who don't know, that's an app that's on your phone. If you would like to call somebody for a ride, you can call a cab, or you can hit the Uber app. And it's somebody who just owns a car that has to be at least a nice car, and they have to have a good driving record. And they have some free time on their hands. And so they'll just drive over and pick you up and take you where you want to go. So it's like a cab service without officially being a cab company. Anybody can be an Uber driver. You don't have to apply for a job at a cab company. And you can become a driver just by logging on when you're free to drive people around. Now, I'm a big fan of this idea because it's free market and usually a whole lot cheaper and more efficient than cab companies. So the state of Wyoming has become involved in Uber. They have to pass laws in this, Boyd. Why?
Well, here's kind of what my understanding is, and to get at this, just to remind your listeners, yes, the Wyoming legislature is in session, so there's a whole bunch of potential lawmaking going on, and my particular interest that I'm watching this session really kind of focuses on economic liberty and opportunities to for the private economy to expand. And
Right.
One of the ways we can do that here in Wyoming really is to think more about entrepreneurs. Think more about people who want to hustle.
Yeah.
Uber is an example. There's a bill. It's called House Bill 80, Transportation Network Companies. And it would apply for Uber or Uber's competitors. Did you know that there's also another out there called Lyft.com
Yeah.
that is roughly very similar? It's actually more independent and has fewer permanent driver or full-time employed drivers than Uber. But you're going to love this.
Yeah, I bet I will.
A pretty fair chunk of this bill is dedicated to trying to set out what type of disclosures are going to be necessary. Apparently, Uber was of the opinion that they couldn't really operate in Wyoming under existing law, and some of that had to do, I guess, or I understand that it had to do with the way the insurance rules for automobiles are set up. And things like licensing commercial or for-hire vehicles versus personal vehicles. So most of the bill is really set up to specify, is this person driving their own car? Is this a company car? What kind of insurance has to be in place? Specifying that, hey, if you're going to use your car for doing these rides for people, you have to tell your banker if you've got a loan on the car. If you've got an auto loan, your lender needs to know that that's what you're using the car for.
Basically, it's burying people under a massive bureaucracy so they can't make some extra money on the side.
Well, yeah, some of it, and some of it is protecting property interests of other people, like the folks that hold a lien on the car. But yeah, that's what I figured you were going to love, was that I would say most of the bill is specifying what kind of insurance you have to have, how much coverage you have to have, what you have to disclose to your potential passengers, and then there's some nice things in there, like if Uber's going to hire a driver or approve a driver for Wyoming, there have to has to be a certain level of background checks, and if you show up on the sex offender registry, you're not allowed to be an Uber.
Well, and here's the thing. Uber already does a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you're in an Uber vehicle, you can, as this is part of the app, it says rate my ride. And when you're done with the ride. And so you can go ahead and give the person a certain number of stars. Well, if somebody's consistently getting low ratings, Uber lets them go. I mean, so it's kind of self-policing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about an entrepreneurial system. But that's the bill that's there, and it once again this is something that apparently that there were some laws, some regulations in place in Wyoming that made these companies, these transportation network companies, feel like they couldn't do business in the state until these roadblocks had been knocked down.
Right. Now, you would think, I mean, I was thinking when I first moved to Wyoming some years ago that economically this was one of the easiest places in the country to do business. So it surprised me that somebody couldn't just become an Uber driver in any town in Wyoming, especially because a lot of towns in Wyoming are so small, they don't have a cab company, and somebody might need a ride. So for somebody who's looking for a little extra income, to be able to just log in with Uber whenever they're free and go pick up people, why would we want to get in the way of that?
Yeah, and it is a little bit surprising, but if nothing else, it teaches us that we cannot take economic liberty for granted.
Yeah.
That even in Wyoming, communities seem to be prone to adopting local laws, local regulations, or even our state legislature is prone to adopting maybe a cookie-cutter law from someplace else in the country that basically makes it so somebody can't do business.
Well, now, something else you might want to look into as you're writing up this story. There is a guy that I know in Gillette, Wyoming, who has a couple of limousines, and he likes to ride people around, during prom, weddings, whatever like that. If you want to rent a limousine, he's your driver, and it's one of his side businesses. He has another business, but he keeps these limousines around for whenever somebody might need a limousine. Well, there are people who like to go to South Dakota, to Deadwood, which, as you know, you get on the interstate here and just drive straight east for about an hour and a half, and there's Deadwood, gamble, party, climb back into the limo, and he'll drive you home. But all of a sudden, the state of Wyoming changed some of those rules and regulations because he's driving people across state lines.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, there's different insurance and also he doesn't do it anymore. It doesn't make economic sense for him to drive people to Deadwood and back, even though they were looking essentially for a designated driver so they can go party and not drive home drunk. It doesn't make any economic sense for him to take those trips anymore. He's lost a lot of business.
I bet so. Who knows? Maybe this might let him do that. I don't know. I know that this bill says that it doesn't apply to limousine companies, but maybe he's just Ubering. Yeah.
Now, when you're looking at this bill, do you like this bill that they're trying to pass, or do you think it's more of a hindrance?
I like it. This is one that it's being sponsored by several people from across the political spectrum, and my understanding is that this is at the request of Uber, so that they can start trying to operate in Wyoming. And I've gotten it confirmed that this will also open the door to Lyft or to anybody else that uses this business model where you use an app to prearrange a ride.
Yeah.
And then the driver is a independent contractor that you can reserve that way.
Yeah, you're on the clock when you want to be on the clock. All Uber looks for is they do have a background check system for Uber as it is. They just want a decent, clean-cut person who has a decent operating, clean vehicle. That's all they ask for. And again, you're rated at the end of every drive. The passenger is asked to rate the driver, and the better their ratings, the more Uber sends their way. The worse the ratings, the better chance they have of being cut off by Uber. So to me, that's a wonderful system, especially for people who live way out in the middle of nowhere. in places like Wyoming and might need a ride like that. Okay, we got about a minute left. Now, there's other things that you and I were talking about getting into. Are you free tomorrow at this time?
I can probably make myself free tomorrow at this time if you would like.
Yeah, because there's some other topics that you and I were going to get into on the legislative side.
I think, and it's critical for up around Gillette there, special districts and some of the stuff that goes on to over 600 little quasi-local government taxing authorities that just kind of fly under the radar.
Yeah. I didn't realize there was that many taxing authorities around the state of Wyoming, so we'll have to talk about that. Okay. So you're free tomorrow, again, same time, same radio show?
I will plan to call in tomorrow, and we can talk a little bit about special districts.
Okay. Thanks for coming on board. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Glenn, and have a good day.
All right, you too.